Good afternoon,
Good
Professor
afternoon,
Spooner.
Frank. Good afternoon. So a lot has happened since we talked last, but then I suppose that's always the case. But I've been thinking again about my characterization of this phase of globalization as the crucial phase, because I mean, as it seemed to me a few years ago when I was working on a book, the rate of social change was faster now than ever before. And change is difficult. People can't keep up with it, and they don't know how to. As long as it's slow, people can manage it. But as it speeds up, people find it very difficult to cope with what's changing, and it always affects some people differently from others. And so some people react against it and start to fight in resistance to what's going on. And I think that the biggest problem in the current part of the crucial phase, as I see it, is political organization. And of course, people have been saying for a long time, and we've said before, that probably the biggest global problem as globalization progresses is going to be how on earth do we manage it politically? And we've talked, I think, also about the fact that nation states seem to be failing one after the other, and maybe we're coming to the end of the era of nation states now. And we still don't have any real substitute for it. But if you look around the world now at the nation states that are in the news, they don't seem to be working in the way that they're supposed to work. And you can start, as if we do it alphabetically, we can start with America.
Yes.
and look at what's going on in Washington today, and look and see what other people in other parts of the world are writing about what's going on in Washington today. And then, of course, as you look at more and more of them, I think I said last time, or after we finished talking last time, that I should have mentioned Turkey. And Turkey is certainly a very interesting case. I think all of these cases have something to do with the problem of identity. Up until the 17th century, there had been a millennium and a half, or at least, in which the main way people identified themselves in our part of the world was by a religion. You were either a Christian or you weren't. And if you were a Christian, you belonged to a particular denomination. And then, of course, there was linguistic identity, who you could understand and who you couldn't understand. And then after the religious wars of the 17th century, the nation state gradually formed, and everybody began, the main form of identity was the nation state. So you were either English, French, American, German, or so on. Well, a lot of them didn't get formed until the 19th century, actually. But I think that as in what's going on in globalization now, there's a number of nation states that are worried about losing their identity. And certainly Turkey, which was a secular nation state established in place of the Ottoman Empire, and it was supposed to be secular to get rid of the idea of the caliphate. Mm-hmm. Has been at odd. The population, different parts of the population have been at odds over whether they should be have a secular identity or a religious identity. North Korea has the problem of its relationship to South Korea. China is concerned about everybody who's Chinese being Chinese, and people who aren't Chinese not being Chinese. I think the Japanese have the same problem. European Union, maybe that's part of the problem in the European Union as well, because there seems to be a lot of resistance in a number of countries in the European Union about against the idea of losing their nation state identity and being just Europeans.
Right. Right.
though it's not expressed that way.
I, I,
So,
I agree with you on most of your points. I completely agree with you that the pace of globalization has accelerated, even in the months that we've been talking. It's moving at blinding speed. More and more people are seemingly adrift and disaffected because they can't keep up. And it's as if they're going down a fast-moving stream and they're trying to latch on to any purchase they can find. And more often than not, it's either national identity or some sub-xenophobic subpart of national identity, something to hold on to. And I think that kind of tenacious clinging to that identity is causing significant difficulty globally today, because those points are ineradicable. They can't be erased. They can't be overcome. People go to their graves defending them, whether it's out of fear or belief or a combination of both. I don't necessarily see this acceleration on a global scale, all of the places that you just mentioned. I don't see all of this ending up with some kind of, oh, wow, things are really dangerous now. Let's get everybody together in the UN, Macron to North Korea to Trump to Putin to Xi, and get everybody together and just sequester everybody there. Bring the Pope in, bring the head rabbi of Jerusalem in, bring everybody in who might matter. And
now Merkel's grandma.
And Merkel's grandmother, right. And sit there for however long it takes to try to figure something out. I don't see that happening. And
that's not the level at which things are going to get solved, I don't think. But I wonder whether this is also part of the reason, or maybe one of the main factors underlying the increasing movement of people out of some parts of the world, attempting to get into other parts of the world, especially across the Mediterranean, which continues to be a major problem, which the European Union seems to have no idea how to solve. And then we have this odd situation in this country with a resistance to immigration into this country. And I don't know, even though we hear about it from Washington all the time, but I don't know how much support it has outside the current administration.
I understand that, but I guess if you look at the basics, though, if for example, if you look at the microcosm of the United States, and you imagine the conversation between Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer, all right, the Republican majority leader and the Democratic minority leader of the U.S. Senate, all right, with Schumer recognizing full well that some 28 states or so that are so-called rural states that were won by Trump by more than 5 percentage points over Hillary Clinton are inevitably going to be electing Republican senators for the foreseeable future. And if Schumer in turn, I should say if McConnell then in turn recognizes that the blue states that are represented by the Democrats are unalterably opposed to anything that the Republicans are going to try to do, same view that Schumer has of McConnell's intended policies, you just would like to be a fly on the wall between these two guys who understand how the system as it currently is set up, how it works, who have known each other forever. I mean, what do they even talk about? Do they just sit there and shake their heads going, boy, things are really screwed up. I mean, we're never going to be able to find our way out of this mess? Or is there any, I'm very pessimistic as to what's going to happen now. I don't see anything good.
Pessimism is a problem. I'm an optimist, but the way I see things being resolved is by smaller groupings of people replacing the nation state. But the problem with this is that identities have become very confused because of the internet.
Correct.
and the spread of language, the fact that you can go all over the world now and speak English has actually made things more problematic.
That's true. That's a very good observation. If everybody only spoke the language of origin, then I think that would be much more helpful, because this kind of, whatever the right word is, neuroses, fear, contamination, whatever, could remain
Everything
within that.
is communicated immediately.
Right,
So
right.
somebody, the leader of North Korea says something and we know it immediately, which means that things are happening faster than we can register what's happening, which makes it very dangerous. And of course, the papers have been saying for a couple of days now that the big danger between America and North Korea at the moment is that there'll be a miscalculation.
Yes.
And they'll both find themselves doing something they wish they hadn't done.
Yes.
And that something wouldn't have happened not so long ago.
But I'm not so sure your concept of problem solving at the small group level is really going to work, because by almost definition, the internet and social media now has made small groups obsolete. There are no more small groups. I mean, a small group can become a big group overnight, and it oftentimes does.
That's the problem. I mean, one thing that I liked very much in the Iranian Revolution was the replacement of the structure that had been developed by the Shah, the last Shah, who was in power from 41 to 79, was replaced by a committee system, where everybody had a relationship with a small committee, and each committee had a member on the committee the next level up.
Correct.
And that seemed to work very well. I'm not sure whether it's still working, because it doesn't get written up in a way that I can follow it.
Well, excuse me. There was another reason too. All right, because first of all, you had fairly intelligent people who were setting that apparatus up. Right, with a fairly historically long history of being able to run a country, if not an empire. All right, well-educated people. But most importantly, they had a non-porous kind of environment to operate in. All right, they freely admitted controlling access to the global media. There were no foreign visitors allowed in to speak of. They made sure their borders were intact. They had a little laboratory to operate in, and it was essentially telling the Iranian people, okay, look, this is the deal. We're all here. We're all in this box. We're going to make this work. We're going to have to do this. And that doesn't happen anymore, it doesn't seem. I mean, that almost goes back to the idea of English being so common that it spills out across borders, and people feel that they have the right, the unfettered right, to be able to involve themselves elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea of borders is relatively modern. I mean, it was really the colonial powers that started drawing borders around territories.
Yeah. I mean, you didn't need a passport until like 1890 or something, right?
Oh, the 1920s.
The 1920s. Okay.
No, I mean, passports started to be obligatory between 1921 and 1924 in Europe.
Okay.
And I think that's where they started. And visas 10, 15, 20 years after that. There's some very interesting books written by somebody who actually was wandering about at the time in Europe at the time when passports began to be required. But the problem is that there are so many nation states, which we like to think of still as identities, which had their boundaries drawn around them by people who had nothing to do with them.
Mm-hmm.
That's most of Africa.
Yeah.
And for that matter, it also includes places like Pakistan.
Oh yes.
Most of the people in Pakistan, Pakistan was a country formed by the people who came there from India, not by the people who were there already.
The Baluch, for example, had been there already, and then the people from India came.
So the border problem is a really significant problem, and now that governments differ enormously about just exactly what they should be doing for their populations, it's become more of a problem. So, I mean, one of the big problems in the European Union is how much should the government of a particular member state be providing for people from other parts of Europe who happen to come to their country.
Of course, well, that's a big issue, and that's, for example, an issue that Trump keeps playing on. He keeps capitalizing on.
Yeah,
in the United States. Well, hopefully, even though I'm sitting about 22 miles as the crow flies from Trump's Bedminster Golf Club, which presumably would be on the targeting list for North Korea, hopefully next week at this time we'll be able to have another session.
I hope so. Maybe all we've done today is define the problem. Maybe we'll find a solution by next week.
If we can find a solution by that next week, we'll be nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. All right, Professor Spooner, thank you very much.
Goodbye.
All right.